Hollywood has always been international, but some stars took that global reach literally. These were genuine polyglots who could conduct interviews, give speeches, and live their lives in 4, 5, even 7 different languages. Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn spoke 6 languages fluently: English, Dutch, French, Italian, Spanish, and German. Her multilingual ability wasn't just impressive, it was essential to her survival. Hepburn was born in Brussels in 1929 to a Dutch baroness and British businessman. Her first languages were English and Dutch, learned from her parents. When she was sent to private school in Belgium, she added French. Her childhood was peripatetic, moving between England, Belgium, and the Netherlands as her father's business demanded. In 1939, believing the Netherlands would remain neutral in the coming war, Hepburn's mother moved the family to Arnhem. She was catastrophically wrong. When Germany invaded Holland in May 1940, 11-year-old Hepburn found herself living under Nazi occupation. To avoid attention, she went by her Dutch name Etta van Heemstra rather than her English name. She quickly had to perfect her Dutch, which she'd spoken since childhood, but with a noticeable English accent. Any hint of British connection could bring suspicion. During the war years, Hepburn danced in secret performances to raise money for the Dutch resistance. She ran messages and helped hide fugitives. She learned enough German to understand the occupiers, though she rarely spoke it and later tried to forget it. After the war, she moved to England to study ballet, then to Rome, where she worked in Italian films. She learned Italian during these years and later perfected it during her second marriage to Italian psychiatrist Andrea Dotti. Spanish came naturally as she worked in international productions and traveled extensively. By the time she became a major Hollywood star, Hepburn could conduct interviews in any of 6 languages. She used this ability extensively during her later career as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, speaking to children and officials around the world in their native tongues. Her son, Sean Ferrer, later said his mother was fluent in English, Dutch, French, and Italian, could communicate well in Spanish, and had learned German during the war, but hardly used it. Hepburn's linguistic ability reflected her extraordinary life, shaped by war, displacement, and a childhood spent moving between countries and identities. Peter Ustinov. Peter Ustinov spoke English, French, German, Italian, and Russian fluently, with conversational ability in several other languages. But what made Ustinov truly remarkable was his ability to mimic accents and dialects within those languages. Ustinov was born in London in 1921 to a Russian father and French mother. He grew up trilingual in English, French, and German. His family background was extraordinarily cosmopolitan. His father's family had fled Russia after the revolution. His mother's family was French-Swiss. Ustinov attended Westminster School, where he learned classical languages and added Italian and Russian to his repertoire. He used his linguistic abilities throughout his career, not just speaking foreign languages, but performing in them. He could do comedy in French, drama in German, and interviews in Italian. Directors cast him in multilingual roles, knowing he could handle dialogue in any language required. Ustinov's gift extended beyond vocabulary and grammar. He could adopt regional accents, class distinctions, and dialectical variations. He once performed an entire sketch in which he played multiple characters from different countries, switching seamlessly between languages and personas. In later years, Ustinov became a Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF, like Hepburn. He used his languages to communicate with children and officials worldwide. He wrote books in multiple languages and gave lectures that showcased his polyglot abilities. Ustinov died in 2004, remembered as much for his linguistic brilliance as for his acting career. Sophia Loren. Sophia Loren spoke Italian, English, and French fluently. She was born Sofia Villani Schiccolone in Rome in 1934, raised speaking Italian. She learned French through Italian schools, which emphasized French language study, and perfected it while working on French-Italian co-productions in the early 50s. Loren learned English for her Hollywood career, arriving in America in the mid-50s, speaking almost none. She worked with dialect coaches and learned quickly, though she maintained a strong Italian accent. Directors often used her accent as part of her exotic appeal. By the early 60s, Lauren was fluent enough in English to handle sophisticated comedy in films like Houseboat with Cary Grant. She could ad-lib and understand American idioms and slang. Her French remained strong throughout her career. She made numerous French films and could give interviews entirely in French without interpreters. In her later years, Lauren spoke all three languages regularly: Italian at home, English for American and British press, and French when working in France or speaking with French admirers. Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr spoke German, English, and French fluently. She was born Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler in Vienna in 1914 to Jewish parents. Her native language was German, the language of Austrian high society in which she was raised. Lamarr learned French at school, part of standard education for wealthy Viennese children. She moved to Paris briefly before coming to Hollywood, perfecting her French during that time. When Lamarr fled her first husband, Austrian arms dealer Fritz Mandl, and came to Hollywood in 1937, she spoke German and French fluently, but had to learn English. She worked with dialect coaches to eliminate her thick German accent, achieving a distinctive but understandable English that became part of her exotic screen image. Louis B. Mayer initially wanted to bill her as a French actress rather than Austrian, believing American audiences would more readily accept a French accent than a German one. Lamarr insisted on being herself, an Austrian Jewish refugee who happened to speak multiple languages. During World War II, Lamarr's language skills proved valuable beyond acting. She could translate German broadcasts and documents. She understood technical German, which helped her work with composer George Antheil on frequency-hopping spread-spectrum technology, a patent that would later prove crucial to modern wireless communications. Lamarr died in 2000, remembered belatedly for both her beauty and her brilliant mind, which functioned equally well in three languages. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich spoke German, English, and French fluently, performing professionally in all three languages. She was born in Berlin in 1901 and raised speaking High German. She learned French at school and perfected it during the 1920s, when Paris was a regular destination for ambitious German performers. When Dietrich came to Hollywood in 1930, she spoke almost no English. She learned quickly, working with dialogue coaches while filming her early American films. Within 2 years, she was fluent enough to handle complex dialogue and even comedy that required precise timing. Dietrich famously recorded songs in multiple languages. She would record the same song in German, English, and French with different arrangements for each market. Her German recordings remained popular in Germany even after she became an American citizen and entertained Allied troops during World War II. Dietrich's multilingual ability made her valuable during the war. She performed for troops in multiple languages and recorded anti-Nazi propaganda broadcasts in German for the Office of Strategic Services. She could communicate with soldiers from various Allied nations, singing to French troops in French, to American soldiers in English, and even speaking to German prisoners in their native language, trying to convince them to surrender. After the war, Dietrich performed in cabarets worldwide, switching between languages within single performances. A Paris audience might hear her sing in French, tell jokes in German, and banter with the orchestra in English. She died in 1992, having spent 8 decades moving fluidly between the languages of her extraordinary life. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo spoke Swedish, English, and German fluently. She was born in Stockholm in 1905 and raised speaking Swedish. She learned German while working in Swedish films in the early 1920s. Germany was the center of European cinema, and ambitious Swedish actors needed to speak German. When Garbo came to Hollywood in 1925, she spoke Swedish and German, but very limited English. MGM assigned her an interpreter and language coach. Garbo worked intensively to master English before the talkies arrived, understanding that her career depended on it. Her first sound film, Anna Christie, in 1930, was advertised with the tagline, "Garbo Talks." Audiences wondered what she would sound like. Her husky, slightly accented English became iconic. Garbo's accent never fully disappeared, but she used it to her advantage, creating a mysterious, foreign persona that captivated audiences. She was fluent enough to handle complex dialogue and even comedy, though she preferred dramatic roles. Garbo's German remained strong throughout her life. She kept German books in her library and maintained friendships with German-speaking expatriates in Hollywood. During World War II, she avoided using German publicly due to political sensitivities, but privately she still spoke it. After Garbo retired from films in 1941, she lived reclusively in New York. She spoke Swedish with old friends from Sweden, German with European intellectuals she befriended, and English in her daily life. She died in 1990, fluent in all three languages until the end. Zsa Gabor spoke Hungarian, German, English, and French fluently, a linguistic range befitting her international lifestyle. She was born Sari Gabor in Budapest in 1917, raised speaking Hungarian. As part of Budapest's upper-middle-class Jewish community, she learned German, which was commonly spoken in the Austro-Hungarian cultural sphere. Gabor learned French through schooling and later perfected it while living in Europe. She learned English after coming to America, though she deliberately maintained her thick accent as part of her screen persona. Gabor understood that her accent was part of her brand. It made her seem exotic and foreign, valuable qualities in a Hollywood that often cast her as European aristocrats or mysterious foreign beauties. But she was genuinely fluent, capable of complex conversations and witty repartee in all four languages. She could do television interviews in German when visiting Germany, in French when in France, and in Hungarian when old Hungarian films were rediscovered late in her career. Gabor died in 2016 at age 99, still speaking all four languages fluently. Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee spoke English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish fluently. He had conversational ability in Swedish and Russian, plus some knowledge of Greek and Mandarin. His linguistic range was staggering even by Hollywood standards. Lee was born in London in 1922 to an Italian Contessa mother and British Lieutenant Colonel father. He grew up bilingual in English and Italian, spending time in Italy with his mother's family. He attended elite British schools where he learned French and German. During World War II, Lee served in the Royal Air Force and later in Special Operations Executive, conducting intelligence work that required language skills. He spent time in North Africa and Italy, perfecting his Italian and picking up Arabic phrases. After the war, Lee pursued acting and found his linguistic abilities invaluable. He could dub his own performances into multiple languages, a rare skill that made him more valuable to international productions. Directors could cast him knowing he could perform in the original language rather than requiring dubbing. Lee learned Spanish while working on numerous films shot in Spain during the 1960s and 70s. He picked up Swedish while filming in Scandinavia. His Russian was conversational, learned partly from Russian immigrants he'd known in England. In interviews conducted in various languages, Lee demonstrated not just fluency, but cultural knowledge. He could discuss literature, history, and philosophy in French, quote opera in Italian, and engage in political discussions in German. Lee died in 2015 at age 93, having spent 70 years using his linguistic gifts to build one of cinema's most remarkable careers. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin deserves mention not for speaking multiple languages in the traditional sense, but for creating a universal language through silent film. Chaplin spoke English natively, learned some French, and understood German well enough to satirize Hitler in The Great Dictator. But his real linguistic genius was physical. Chaplin could communicate complex emotions, subtle humor, and profound ideas without words. His films played equally well in Tokyo, Moscow, Paris, and Peoria because they transcended verbal language. When talkies arrived, Chaplin resisted. He understood that sound would limit his audience to those who spoke English. His first two sound films, City Lights and Modern Times, had synchronized music and sound effects, but virtually no dialogue. When Chaplin finally made a full talking picture with the great dictator in 1940, he used language as a weapon, delivering a passionate speech about humanity and freedom that needed words. But even then, the film's most memorable moments were physical: Charlie's pantomime with a globe, his dance with a balloon. Chaplin died in 1977, having spent 6 decades proving that cinema could speak every language simultaneously.